In this video, I wanted to show you a pretty neat little tool here inside InkStitch that I didn't even know existed, but I could certainly see where it could be quite useful. So in the case of this logo here, we have two rings. We have a outer ring and then we have an inner ring. And if we remember when we were digitizing, what did we do? We specified a 4mm stroke on the outer ring and inner ring, and then we used InkStitch, the stroke to satin option, to convert this into satin stitches. And of course that worked just fine, right? But remember when we were digitizing, I told you to make a duplicate of the outer and inner layer, our inner ring. And I asked you to do that because what if we had a situation where our customer did not like the width, or we stitched it out and we didn't like the width, this 4mm width that we originally chose? Well, what we could do, of course, is we could come in here, turn off the 4mm. We still have our duplicates. Then I could give that a 6mm stroke, right? And give this a 6mm stroke and then convert to satin. And then we would have a wider satin pieces. So while that works, that is probably a bit more work than we really need to do. So let me show you this pretty cool tool here. So we're going to grab our ellipse tool. We're going to hold our control key down, make a circle, a perfect circle. Now, this effect that I'm about to show you is not shape specific. So any path this could be applied to. But in this case, we're going to apply it to a circle. And if I come up here to path, of course, we know that we have to change our object, which is our ellipse, to an actual path. That's pretty standard. So we'll go ahead and do that, object to path. And now we can apply this effect. So if we go under InkStitch, come down here to Tool Satin, and choose the Live Path Effect Satin, we're going to go with the pattern of normal, and we're going to add a 3mm satin column around this circle. And our pattern length, I don't think actually affects anything when we're using a normal pattern. Now, when we're using the other patterns, then absolutely, it will affect that. Now, I will link to the video in the listing description below that Project Anonymous did on this topic. Now, in their particular video, I believe they were doing a patch border. And I just thought, hey, that is a really cool function, thinking it was something special in InkStitch, when in reality, this little dialog box is, I guess, technically special, but the actual effect is just a standard InkScape effect. And I actually didn't really realize that until I thought about it a little bit. But at any rate, we do want to use this option of stretched. And we do want to, I don't know what this does yet. I haven't read the instructions, but let's go over to the help menu. And it kind of tells us right here, it says you can edit the satin path through the live path effect settings through path and path effects. So it's essentially telling us that yes, if you go into path effects in InkScape, you can further edit this design. So this is not a InkStitch thing technically, it's just InkScape. Okay, and there's a button down here where you can actually go to the website and really do a deep dive in what all these options are. And I will say this, I'm guilty of it. I do not like to read instructions, so I click, 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 click. I click buttons and watch videos rather than just read the text that's provided. But I will tell you this, the best advice somebody gave me was to read the instructions on the website. That is step number one. Don't watch videos. Read those instructions because it's incredibly good documentation. Like, somebody took some time and really detailed things out, and the documentation for InkStitch and InkScape both is really unparalleled. Like, it is really, really good documentation. So if you have a question, that's definitely the place to go. First is in the documentation. Then you could check out the videos. But at any rate, I don't know what this function does because I haven't read the documentation. But it doesn't appear to have any effect at all, at least for this particular pattern normal option here. So now if I hit apply, I'll go ahead and do that. You will see that we get a 3mm satin border. And if I go to my measurement tool and I click and drag, and look, it is 3 millimeters, okay? So that's pretty cool stuff, all right? And then if I go into my params, you will see that we do get a perfect satin border. Okay, 3 millimeters. And then, of course, once we're here in params, we could do all the normal stuff. We could add underlay. We can change the density, you know, all that stuff. So that is that, right? Now, I did run into a bit of a situation, and it boggled my mind for quite a while. So it is important for us to go through. But you can see in this particular example, right now we have a 3 millimeter border. But if I want to just come in here and come back into, so I have my path selected now, and I go back into Tool Satin, and then I wish it showed us something here that kind of indicated that this had a path effect applied. In this particular case, it doesn't. But at any rate, if I go back to that stroked live path and then say, okay, no, the customer said they needed that that satin column to be 8, and when I hit apply, you will see that that now switches from 3 to 8. And if I go to my measurement tool and I zoom in here a little bit and I measure that, sure enough, it truly is 8 millimeters. So all that's pretty cool stuff. But there's a couple other options here that probably will drive you mad if I don't point them out to you. Because if you run into it, you'll be like, what in the world's going on here? So, so at any rate, where this could really be useful too is think about when you're doing applique. You know, sometimes you're doing applique and you want your satin column to be a specific width. So let's say I want my satin column to be 6 millimeters, but when I actually go to stitch it out, my satin column is not just quite covering the tack down stitch, for example. And so I may have to go with, instead of the 6 millimeter column I wanted, I may have to just go 6.5 or 7 or 7.5. I might just want to make a small incremental adjustment until it does exactly what I want it to do. That's where this really comes into play here. But if I grab my node tool, you can see here that I can modify the width of this satin column dynamically. So if I click this node here and I zoom in and out like this, I could change it dynamically, right? All right, well, that's pretty cool stuff. So I could change it visually if I want it just a touch wider. That's pretty cool. But that's generally not how we would use this, right? Because normally if we're doing a satin border, we wouldn't do it by eye. We would, because we don't, you know, it's hard to tell how wide it actually is on the computer screen. So we would give it a specific dimension. But another thing that we might do, though, is we might change the size of the path, right? So we might edit the path in a variety of ways, right? So we might, let's say we need a shape like that, and we, well, we don't want that wide, and let's see here. Maybe I want to do it, you know, maybe I just need some kind of goofy path shape, something like that, right? And so I've modified this pretty significantly. Now, right now, this is now 15 millimeters wide, right? So it's not the width that I last applied because I modified that. So if I go back up here to extensions and choose InkStitch and choose Tool Satin, I come in here to the Stroke to Live Path Effect. Now I want to give this an actual width. So now I have to give it, let's say I want it to be 4 millimeters, a 4 millimeter satin border, right? So we'll go ahead and do that. Set that to 4 millimeters and hit apply. And so what we're expecting here is in fact a 4 millimeter border. So let's go ahead and do that. And is that 4 millimeters? Well, let's take a look. So I grab my measurement tool and I measure, and bloody, no, it's not. It's 7.63. So, InkStitch developers, wonderful little tool, saves us a few steps. The tool's wonderful, but the only thing I wished it did is I wished there was a couple extra steps and that it would, and you'll see all the steps that we have to take to actually make this happen. but I wished it would remove the effect that it already exists and then apply the new effect so that when we did this, after we've edited a path with a live effect applied, that we would get the expected result that we asked for, which is, in this case, a 4mm satin border. But there are several steps that we have to do in order to achieve this. But remember, InkStitch people kind of gave us a hint that if we wanted to edit something, we could do it in the path effects, right? So I need this resize shape. I need this satin border to be 4mm, and you could see when we went in here to InkStitch and used that option, we cannot get back to 4mm, right? So if I enter 10, what we should get is we should get a satin border of 10, but we don't get a satin border of 10. We get a satin border, in this case, probably 20 or so. So let's zoom in here, and you can see, in fact, we do get, it's not quite 20, but it's roughly 20. It's 18.93, okay? So what's happening here is something it's kind of like an InkScape thing. So let's take a look at what's truly happening there. So if we come back over here, and we will go into path effects like it told us to. So it sees that there is a path effect applied to this. And you see this width right here. You see where it says 0.8? Okay? That should not be 0.8. That should be 1. Okay? So if we choose 1, right, and then come in here and look at the distance, now you can see we are at 20. And I don't remember if that's what I asked for. Let's look. I think I asked for 10. So if I come back in here and choose the zigzag live path effects, yes, I asked for 10. Well, why is it giving me 20? That's not right. So, and honestly, I don't know why. I don't know why this actually happens. I know how to fix it. I just don't understand why it's really happening. So let's go ahead and close that for right now. I do know that this definitely has an effect, right? So if I were to change this to 2, right, then we know that we're going to get a super fat satin border. And if I go 0.5, then we know that we're going to get a smaller satin border. If I go to 0.2, for example, we get a smaller satin border yet, but it's not a specific amount, like a specific distance. So logic tells us what? Logic tells us, if I set that back to, I don't want 10. Let's go 1 again. So logic says that if we clear the path effect, boom, it's gone. Now we just have a path, okay? That now when we go in and add this effect, so let's do it. Let's go back into InkStitch and Satin, and then the stroke to live path. And yes, we want to do 10. So let's go ahead and hit apply. That should now be 10, right? I mean, that's logic says that, but it's not. Okay? It still has this kind of crazy scale factor of 2 applied to it. And I have no idea why. Okay? I have no idea where that scale factor is coming in. And that scale factor is different from situation to situation to situation. So I do not know where that scale factor comes into play. So how do we fix it? Well, first of all, we trash the existing path effect. Okay? Anything that we do to this, I don't think actually matters. If we go into path, object to path, for example, okay, sometimes that's what we do, right? If we have it, in fact, I wonder, no, I'm not even going to go there. But let's just go back in and reapply this and see. I believe I tried this before, and that did not have any effect. So there we are. We're 10. Let's change it to 5. Okay. and we'll hit apply. So now what are we expecting? We're expecting a satin border of 5. Okay, and you can clearly see we don't have a satin border of 5. We have a satin border of that same bloody amount, 22.47. So I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know why. I don't know why. So so at any rate, we're going to trash the path effect, okay, and then just duplicate our shape. That's all we got to do. And now when I go back into paths, so now we've created a brand new shape, and so we're going to go into InkStitch, Tool Satin, and then there we go. We want to apply a 5 millimeter satin border, and we will get a 5 millimeter satin border. Ta-da! See, I don't know why it made us go around in circles like that, but at any rate, you can see here. No, we have, yes, 5 millimeter right here, and it's just because of where I was clicking. But you can see there, we do have a 5 millimeter. Now that makes me wonder. Now that does make me wonder. Let me back up a few steps here. Let's go back here. So what was this? I was looking at this number, and I'm not sure I should have been looking at that number. Yes, 22 millimeters. And we had 10 applied to it. So it had a double scale factor. And I don't know why. I don't know why. So anyhow, that is the solution. Clear the path effect. Duplicate the path to give it something brand new to look at. And now when we come in here to the InkStitch Tool Satin, that we will get our expected results. And of course, if we come back in here, take a look, you'll see how that is pointing there, 5.5 millimeters. That's exactly what we're looking for. Okay. So if you run into that situation, that's what's happening. And that's the way to fix it. And then of course we would come into our layers here. Let's see here. We would, there's the path with the effect applied. Again, it doesn't actually show us the path effect's been applied to that, and I'm not sure why, but the original path, we could definitely delete the duplicate. And so now we're left with just the path with the path effect applied to it. So pretty useful tool. Definitely something I'll be using going forward. Thanks for watching.